Welcome to our second Arsenal guide where we rate a lot of your guys' Arsenals that have been sent to me. Thank you everybody who's sent Arsenal so far. If you want to be included in a video like this in the future, go check out our email that is in our description. Go shoot your Arsenal over there. We have a lot of really interesting ones. We have a couple overseas bowling balls on today's list. We have some bowling balls that are older than me that are on this list, which is really interesting. So stay tuned. Use the timestamps below if you want to go check out certain Arsenals, but otherwise let's get right into it. We are back with our next Arsenal, and this time we have Ryan, otherwise known as Ish Bowling, who is a rev dominant bowler and doesn't have too big of an arsenal, so this one should be pretty quick, pretty easy to do, but let's get into it. So we are starting off with a Storm fast pitch. That was a old school urethane type look. It came out after the pitch black. It was probably the most successful urethane that wasn't the pitch black from Storm over the last like 8 to 10 years. So this thing was really good, but squarely fits in the urethane category. Next one up, GB5. We've talked about that one in the past before. That is a pretty strong medium and smooth bowling ball. Fits on the upper end of that, more of a benchmark-ish reaction, likes to play a little straighter. Moving on to the Supernova. The Supernova was an interesting one. It was a solid Nova. The Nova wasn't very well liked. It was very, very smooth for being a hybrid ball and kind of marketed to be a little sharper. The Supernova was just, hey, this is actually a smooth Nova. So that one fits squarely in the strong smooth. IQ Ruby, one of the GOATs, definitely fits in the weak and sharp category. We have a Black Widow Ghost. That's going to fit in the strong sharp category. Scorpion Strike in the medium sharp. Max Thrill Pearl is going to go in front of the IQ Ruby, in my opinion. It's going to hook a little bit early. Well, yeah, I think the Max Thrill Pearl is very, very close to the Ruby. The Max Thrill Pearl is a little more angular down lane, but they are very, very close together, just different brands. And then we have the Hustle Rip in there also. I see the Rip as later than the Ruby and later than the Max Thrill Pearl. Again, though, three balls that are fairly similar. So looking at this arsenal for Ryan, being rev dominant, makes sense to have a lot of balls in the weak and sharp category. Totally understandable. Nothing in the weak smooth is a little bit interesting. I'd recommend putting something there like an IQ Tour or something like the Max Thrill Solid if you really like the Max Thrill Pearl that you have. Something like that would fit really well there. But then the rest of the lineup is very, very well rounded. One ball in each category. Going from the Supernova down to the GB5 is a great combo. Going from the Ghost, the Black Widow Ghost, down to the Scorpion Strike, another great combo. So I just recommend a weak smooth ball, and then you might not need all three of these in the weak sharp. You could probably mess with the surfaces, maybe sand one of them to move it to the weak and smooth category, and you'll be good to go. Moving on to our next arsenal, we have Mason. Mason is a two-hander, lots of speed and revs according to him, and fairly balanced. So we're going to treat him like a balanced bowler. We have a ton of bowling balls here. I didn't count how many. 4, 8, 12, 16, 24, 28 bowling balls. So let's get into it. Let's get through this one. See what we've all got. We have a nice little range of companies and ball reactions, it looks like. But starting at the top, we have Proton Physics, fits in the strong and smooth category. Attention Star in the strong sharp. We have an Astrophysics. Now that one's very interesting. Where does that go compared to an Attention Star? I think these two balls are more similar than what people thought, but I'm going to put the Astro behind the Attention Star because for how we rate these, reminder that it's how early they hook versus how late they hook. So the further left they are, left because I'm flipped on my camera, the further left that the ball is, the earlier it hooks in its lineup. So the Attention Star hooks earlier than the Astrophysics. Moving on, we have the Dark Code. The Dark Code is going to fit in front of the Attention Star. That is a pretty strong core and cover combo. Black Widow 2.0 Hybrid is next. That one's a little bit interesting. I'm going to put it after the Dark Code, but before the Attention Star. While it has that massive Black Widow core, the cover on it is pretty weak, even though it's hybrid. I still see the Dark Code hooking earlier. Next up, we're going to the NV Tour. The NV Tour is going to fit in the strong smooth. I think it's going to hook a little bit later than the Proton Physics. However, the Eternity Pie is going to hook after the NV Tour. The Eternity Pie is a pretty weak, strong smooth ball. Next, we have one of the most interesting urethane balls that Storm came out with was the Fever Pitch. This was a Pearl Pitch Black. We're just going to put it in the urethane and move on. Next up is a Hustle Inc. Hustle Inc. is going to be in the weak, and I'm going to bump that to the weak, and that one's tough. I usually put the Hustle Rip in the weak and sharp category. The ink was a little bit smoother, though, so I'm going to put that in the weak and smooth category. This was the older version of the Hustle Rip. This one was phenomenal for a lot of people. Next up, we have a Rodman, the original Rodman, super old ball. I think it's 8 years old at this point. It is a symmetrical solid ball. I had to look it up. Pretty middle of the road stats on everything. It's going to be on the lower end of medium smooth, though. IQ Emerald, one of the GOATs, weak and sharp. Hyper Venom media is going to be medium sharp. The Venom Shock, in my opinion, is going to hook earlier than that old Rodman. The old Rodman, it's just so old that it isn't going to be great, where the Venom Shock has been updated and revamped throughout the years to make it competitive in today's environments. Next up, we have the Raw Pearl. That goes well after the IQ Emerald. Next is an Extreme Envy. Extreme Envy is one of the earliest hooking bowling balls made in the last couple of years, so that goes squarely first in the strong and smooth category. Ooh, this one's interesting. Dark Web Hybrid. The Dark Web series was not great. The original webs were great. Dark Web's not as great. They hooked very early and were very slow. I'm actually going to put that as the earlier than the Venom Shock and the Rodman. Next up, Exotic Gem is definitely going to go in front of the Dark Code, in front of all of them. The Exotic Gem was super, super early. Then we have a purple. The purple slammer is going to be before the fever pitch. The fever pitch just hooked late and was very smooth, just not really usable, where the purple actually hooked earlier. Next, we have the honey badger intensity. Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to put it first in the medium and smooth category. The honey badger series was very mild ASIMs, kind of like a Rubicon. They acted more like symmetrical balls than asymmetrical, but this one did hook very early. This was one of the first ones 900 Global made, or one of the last ones before they got absorbed by Storm. Then we have a Hyped Solid. Hyped Solid definitely fits above the Hustle Ink. The Hyped Solid was just a solid version of those super weak hyped balls. Next, we have the Pink Widow. I'm going to put the Pink Widow in front of the, behind the Purple Hammer. I'm going to put it behind the Purple Hammer. It has the same cover stock as the Purple, but it just seems to hook a little bit later, even though the core is massive. Those are very close. I'll put it in front. I'll put it in front. Hazmat Hybrid, that's going to go in front of the Hyper Venom in the medium and sharp category. This one was a hybrid, pretty strong core cover combo, so that's going to be pretty high in the medium sharp end. Next up is an Ion Pro. I'm putting the Ion Pro first in the weak and smooth category. I think we finally decided that the Ion Pro is a weak and smooth ball and not a medium and smooth ball, but it's going to be super early in that list. It's going to hook earlier than both the Hyped and the Hustle. Next is a Physics Blackout. We're getting to a newer bowling ball. So the Physics Blackout, I put in the strong sharp category. I'm actually going to put it after the Exotic Gem, but before the Dark Code. The Physics Blackout does come out at 2000 grit and not shiny. So it could go earlier if we treated it as it comes out of box. It would definitely be earlier than the Exotic, but if we put the Exotic and the Blackout at the same surface, then in my opinion, the Exotic Gem comes before it. So that one might need a little bit of testing to see what happens. Next, we have the original DNA. I'm going to put the original DNA after the Envy Tour, but before the Eternity Pie. That DNA was supposed to be super strong. It just wasn't. Next is an Ion Max. I personally see the Ion Max as earlier than the Proton Physics and a little earlier than the Envy Tour, but I don't see it as early as the Extreme Envy. That's one of the earliest hooking bowling balls on the market in the Ion Max, but not as early as the Extreme. 2 balls remaining. Storm Summit, that definitely goes above the Honey Badger intensity. That Summit hooked early, even though it was a hybrid. Very, very early. And then finally, we have the Deviate Heckler. The Deviate Heckler is going to fit at the end of the strong and smooth category. It's could get close to a medium smooth depending on how you drill it, but overall, in my opinion, it is a it is a strong and smooth ball. So let's look at this list. Mason is a two-hander who's more balanced. However, we can see that this arsenal really skews towards these strong bowling balls, the strong sharp and the strong smooth. Let me get a little bit closer so we can get a better idea of what's all going on here. So we don't have many medium and sharp bowling balls. My recommendation would be adding in a medium sharp ball or two. The Hazmat and the Hyper Venom are very smooth for being in the medium and sharp category. So you could add something else here to match well with some of your other symmetrical balls. If you like having this many ASIMs, that's awesome. Then I would just keep these. I wouldn't really buy new ones though. You have a really good mix. A lot of new ones also. I think the oldest is the Astro. Outside of that, the oldest ball on this list is probably an Exotic or a Black Widow 2.0, so they all should be in pretty good shape. So I would just fill out this medium sharp, maybe get 1 or 2, and then maybe get a new weak sharp because the IQ Emerald is so old at this point. But otherwise, that is my recommendation, Mason. Hope you enjoy this. Let's move on to another arsenal. Moving on to our next arsenal, we have Howard, who is a lefty two-hander, a collegiate bowler, and he says high speed and high rev. And we have about 10 bowling balls to look through. So we're going to go through all of these, see what he needs, and we're going to try to focus more on a collegiate lineup. So what that means is we're going to focus more on the smoother bowling balls and then weaker and sharper. So we're really going to have the stronger bowling balls are just going to be better in general for collegiate settings because it's all sport shots that they bowl on, usually a ton of oil. You don't really need those super, super weak bowling balls. Like weak smooth is probably a category we can ignore. But then the other one to focus on will be urethane. So let's get right into it. As I mentioned, starting with a purple hammer. That's going squarely in the urethane category. Perfect. You need that as a college bowler. I will die on that hill. Next up, Black Widow 2.0 Hybrid. That's going to be a strong, sharp ball. Summit is going to be medium and smooth. IQ Tour is going to be weak smooth. The track Cypher, I always have as medium smooth, but it's very, very weak on the medium and smooth end, so we're going to put it well after the Summit. Next up is a New Blue. I'm going to put the New Blue as earlier than the IQ Tour. The New Blue is weird. It's not urethane. We're not going to put it in the urethane category. It doesn't act anything close to urethane. It really acts like just a really weak reactive ball. So we're going to put it before the IQ Tour. It's going to hook a little bit earlier at the same surface as the IQ. But then we have the Arctic Vibe. And the Arctic Vibe goes in front of both of them. So we have a lot of weak smooth balls already. So in my opinion, it goes Arctic Vibe into Blue Hammer into IQ Tour. This could change depending on surfaces and layouts though. So these are all, especially these first two, are very interchangeable depending on what hooks earlier. Next up is a Black Hammer. The Black Hammer hooks a little bit later than the Purple Hammer because of the hardness of the Black Hammer. It's a little bit harder, and harder bowling balls hook later. Next up is a Troublemaker. I believe this is the hybrid version, but it is a little bit smoother. I'm going to put it after the Cypher. It's going to be right in between medium smooth and medium sharp. And then finally, we have a 900 Global Reality. So this is where everything is. We can notice a few gaps already. We're going to focus on a collegiate arsenal, though. So in my opinion, this weak sharp category, not really the most needed. But I do think medium sharp and strong sharp are necessities. So if I had to pick a few new balls to put into this arsenal, I would add a medium sharp ball or two. Things like, it looks like you don't really have a preference on brand. So that means your college isn't specifically sponsored by anybody. So then I would go things like Scorpion Strikes, Zen 25s, because you said you were a lefty. So you also want smoother medium and sharp bowling balls. So Zen 25 might be a little better. Optimum Idol Pearl. Something like a Primal Rage might be a little too sharp for you, in my opinion. Scorpion Strike might be a little too sharp for you. So I would recommend sticking with like that Optimum Idol or the Zen 25. I think your medium smooth bowling balls look really good. But as a lefty, I would recommend another strong and smooth ball to pair with the Reality. The Reality is pretty weak for being an asymmetrical bowling ball, for being in that strong and smooth category. You might need, like, I always recommend an NV Tour for left-handers. I think that's one of the best balls a lefty can have in their bag. Otherwise, I think something a little stronger than a Reality might work really well too. But otherwise, urethanes, you're set. You have the two best urethanes on the market, both the one that is the best and then the Black Hammer, which is the best for PBA competition. So those are my recommendations for the arsenal. Hopefully this helps. Let me know if it doesn't, though. Let's go to another one, though. Moving on to Christopher. Christopher didn't give any information about himself. That's a-okay, but we have a lot of bowling balls here. We have 3, 6, 9, 11 bowling balls that we're going to be going through. So let's put them into their specific categories. Starting with an Ion Pro, we're putting that in the weak smooth category. We've mentioned that one a few times now. Max Throw Pearl is going to go in the weak and sharp category. A New Blue, I'm going to put after the Ion Pro. I think it hooks a little bit later. Max Thrill Solid, I think, is going to hook later than both also. So I think it goes Ion Pro, New Blue into a Max Thrill Solid. Quick reminder, the further left the bowling ball is on the category list, the earlier it hooks in its arsenal. So here I'm saying the Ion Pro hooks earlier than a New Blue, which hooks earlier than a Max Thrill Solid. This is all up for debate also, depending on layouts, depending on surfaces, depending on how old the ball is and how many games it has on it. Moving on, though, we have a Sub-Zero Forge. That goes squarely in the strong and smooth category. The strongest symmetrical ball on the market today. We have the greatest smelling and best looking bowling ball of all time in the Phase 3. I wish the reaction was a little better. This is a hybrid Phase 2. I believe it had NRG hybrid. I might be wrong on that. So really strong hybrid cover stock, but then the Phase core in it, which was obviously goated. Ivory Rhino, I see that hooking later than a Max Thrill Pearl. So the Ivory Rhino has a slightly stronger, actually the cores are pretty much identical. I believe the RG is a little higher on the Ivory, so we put that a little bit after the Max Thrill Pearl. Here it is, the GOAT, Phase 2, medium smooth, benchmark, versatile piece. This looks to be the Stealth Pearl. Now, the Stealth Pearl, in my opinion, oh man, this one's going to be tough. Between that and a Phase 3, they're going to be kind of close. I would put the Pearl after the Phase 3. We're going to put it before. We're going to put it before. If you have two brand new ones, I think the Stealth Pearl hooks earlier than a Phase 3, but when the Phase 3 gets older, it actually seems to hook earlier and be a lot smoother compared to the Track Stealth Pearl. So I think we're going to go this lineup. This could be subject to change again, depending on how many games each ball has on it. Hammer Effect, that is a strong and sharp bowling ball. And then we have a Deviate Chill. Man, that is an oldie. The Deviate Chill is a weak bowling ball. Ooh, that one's tough. I'm going to put it right in front of the Max Thrill Solid. It does hook early and is super slow. I don't recommend the Chill Sol or the original Chill that often. But I think it fits right before the Max Thrill Solid. I think this is how everything would look right now. So Christopher, this is, and he also has a white dot and then a Rotogrip Pluto. I didn't include that. I don't know what that ball is, but we are going to, this is what we have right now. So no urethanes, A-okay, especially if you're a league bowler, you don't need a urethane. Looking at it, you have a really good, just nice combo of bowling balls. Like you have your one strong smooth. You might not need it much. Look, seeing that you lean towards the weaker bowling balls, you're probably a little rev dominant. So you probably don't use the Sub-Zero that often, or the effect, probably a little more of the effect. Then you have the GOAT in the Phase 2, and that pairs well with the Stealth Pearl and the Phase 3, so great combo there. Your weak smooths look awesome. You have the Ion Pro, a New Blue, a Max Thrill Solid, and as I mentioned, the Chill. Really good four balls there. There is some overlap. There's probably a decent amount of overlap between these four, but that's okay. And then the Max Thrill Pearl and the Ivory Rhino. I don't think there's much overlap between those two. I think the Thrill Pearl is a little bit earlier. So I think you can go Thrill Pearl into Ivory Rhino if you want. So overall, I really like this arsenal. Very well rounded. You have a lot figured out. If you ever need stuff stronger than a Phase 2 or a Stealth Pearl, though, I'd recommend another strong sharp or strong smooth, maybe with a different ball reaction. Maybe like an Ion Max in this first spot or a Jackal Onyx to give you a little more shape down lane in the strong smooth category. Strong sharp, you could probably use like an Attention Star. Everybody could really use an Attention Star. I think that would fit really well with the Hammer Effect. But otherwise, very well rounded. Nice job. Next up, we have someone who wants to remain anonymous, who is a two-hander lefty and rev dominant. So let's get right into it. There aren't many bowling balls here. There is a note that I have on the Harsh Reality Pearl. They say it doesn't hook much anymore. So we will put it where it's supposed to be, but be aware that it doesn't hook much. But let's get it going. Starting off with the Attention Star, the GOAT of strong and sharp category. We're just going to put that into its respectful spot. Eternity Pie is going to be a strong and smooth ball, weaker strong and smooth ball. Purple Slammer in the urethane bit. We have a Brunswick Mesmerize. That's going to go in front of the Eternity Pie. Probably going to be the earliest on the list. Well, I spoke too soon. We have a Gem. Gem versus Mesmerize is a good question. I'm going to put the Gem first, actually. I think that's one of the earlier hooking bowling balls, or was one of the earlier balls on the market. Summit Ascent is going to be a medium smooth versatile piece. Harsh Reality Pearl, like I mentioned, it should go right here. This is where a new Harsh Reality would fit compared to the Attention Star. Said it doesn't hook in it much anymore. I'm guessing it has too many games on it, a little bit oil logged. We'll keep it here for now, but with that asterisk in the back of our mind. Next up is an Origin. I have the Origin later than the Harsh Reality Pearl, but not by much. They are fairly close. The Origin just is a lot more angular down lane and also a little rounder. Just hooks more in general, but doesn't hook as early. Black Widow 3.0, I have that always above the Eternity Pie. It's always a 50-50 on if it's above or below the pie. I'm going to put it above for this one. Gives a nice little round out of the strong smooth. Attention Star S2, that is going to be a strong sharp. It's going to be, man, this one's tough. I'm going to put it after the Origin, but before the OG Attention Star. It has that hybrid cover stock, but it is a weaker hybrid cover stock, and the Attention Core doesn't hook a crazy amount. Last but not least is a Magic Gem. Magic Gem is going to be, it is nearly identical to the OG Gem. There's very little difference. So we're going to put it just right after the OG Gem. So person who wants to remain anonymous says they're Rev Dominant and is a two-hander. And what I'm noticing is that out of the 11 bowling balls, 9 of them are asymmetrical bowling balls. So I think we need to fill in all of these weaker categories with some stuff, especially when you're Rev Dominant. You don't really want that many bowling balls up in these categories. Now, while there are pretty good differences between these 9, there are going to be there's going to be some overlapping that happens. Like in my opinion, you don't need the Magic and the OG for gems. I don't know if you need the Black Widow and the Eternity Pie. And then down here, I think these are good, but if the Harsh Reality Pearl is just not hooking anymore, we could probably just can that one. But then I would recommend a couple medium sharp, weak smooth, and weak sharp bowling balls. It's mainly Storm products on here, so if you're going weak sharp, I would honestly go a Road Warrior to give a lot of differentiation to start, and then go with like a Zen 25 later. And if you want a weak smooth ball, you could go with like an Ion Pro or an IQ Tour. So that's what I'm seeing. Thank you for submitting your arsenal. Hopefully this helps out. Let's go to another one. Jumping off with our next person, we have TMC. Doesn't give any stats about themselves. That's, again, A-OK. We have a lot of bowling balls here. If we scroll down, we've got 6, 8, 10, 12, a lot. Almost 20 bowling balls. We might actually have 20. Counting is hard, but let's kick it off. We'll just make a generic arsenal here, see what's missing, see what we have too much of, and then move on from there. Starting off with the Black Widow 3.0. The best-selling bowling ball of 2024 is going to go in the strong and smooth category. Envy Tour goes a little bit in front of the Black Widow 3.0. Next up, Purple Slammer fits squarely into the urethane category. Hammer Effect is going to be a strong sharp ball, and it looks like a Hammer fan until the next one, where we have the Hitter Solid. Hitter Solid was one of the weaker asymmetrical, strong and smooth bowling balls on the market. Super weak int diff, super weak differential, so that's going to go probably on the bottom of our strong and smooth category, because the further left you go, the earlier a ball hooks. Moving on to the Fireball. Original orange and red Fireball, weak and sharp. There is a new one out. They changed the colorway because why not? Next up is a Top Speed, Columbia 300 Top Speed. This one was had a weaker differential, but a stronger intermediate. No, it had a weaker intermediate differential. So this did have HK22 on it. It's going to go after the effect at the end of the day, but there's a few other ones in here that are interesting compared to that Top Speed, and I think I'm going to notice some overlap, but let's get into them. Next up is the Envision Pearl from Ebonite. This was a weird one, didn't do very well, had a cool colorway, but definitely fits below the Top Speed. It was a pretty weak asymmetrical pearl ball. Next up, Super CUDA Power Core. It's going to go in the medium smooth category. I still hate that name. I love that it's an old ball, but it's such a not good name. Katana Strike. This was a hybrid bowling ball in the Katana series. This was one of the remakes of the Katanas from Radical. This one's tough. I'm going to see it after the Hammer Effect. The Hammer Effect still hooks a little bit early, even though it's a pearl, because the core is so strong. And that Katana was a wonky core. Really low differential, really high intermediate differential. So it's going to fit in front of the Top Speed, but below the effect. Next, we have the Counter Attack Solid. That's going to go in the weak and smooth category. The Results Plus now, that is one of the weakest asymmetrical pearl balls on the market. That one was also super, super wonky. That's going to go below the Envision Pearl. Troublemaker Hybrid is up next. I'm going to put it at the weak end of medium and smooth. It is a hybrid, and it leans a little more towards solid than pearl, in my opinion. Counterattack Pearl. We're going to put this one in front of the Fireball, in front of the OG Fireball. These counterattacks were actually pretty good bowling balls. The counter series, or the attack series in general, is for Radical. There aren't any right now, so Radical, please make a couple more. But I think that one fits a little bit before the Fireball. Next is the Troublemaker Pearl. That fits squarely into the medium and sharp category. That is an awesome, awesome bowling ball. Next is the Vintage Phantom. For anyone who didn't know, there was an old ball called the Brunswick Phantom, and it got remade probably about 5 to 7 years ago. Insanely weak, weak bowling ball. I put it as a weak and smooth. The cover was a little stronger. The core was bonkers, bonkers weak. I had one, but I never ended up drilling it. Someone gave it to me used. But I have that in front of the counterattack solid. Next up is the Pearl Collision. I believe this one's the Wicked Collision or the Violent, one or the other. But it was the Pearl variant of them. I'm going to put that in front of the effect. It is kind of close to the effect in terms of how early it hooks. That Collision core was bonkers strong. That was like the strong core for Deviate for a minute. So that's where I'm going to put that guy. Looking at the arsenal then, we have a lot of Pearl and hybrid asymmetrical bowling balls on here, and we don't have any stats from TMC if they're rev dominant or speed dominant or whatever they are. But that is a lot of asymmetrical shiny balls. So I think we could disperse those a little bit, get rid of a couple. The Envision is getting pretty old. The Results is pretty old. You might be able to can both of those. Maybe put in another medium and sharp bowling ball that fits well with the Troublemaker Pearl, like a Scorpion Strike, for example. Or if you want to go, I would recommend later something like a Hammer Anger could be really good too, because the gap between a Troublemaker Pearl and a Counterattack Pearl is very large. So a Hammer Anger might fit really well here also. The rest of the categories look okay. The medium smooths, in my opinion, there's better medium and smooth balls out there, like the GB5 or the Hazmat Solid, because it looks like this person is a Brunswick fan. That one's okay. If it works, it works. So that is what my recommendations would be. Overall, a pretty well-rounded arsenal, minus those shiny ASIMs being very dominant. So just disperse those a little bit more, and I think you'll be good to go. Jumping over to another arsenal, we have Gustavo, who is a two-handed righty league bowler, and we have some interesting bowling balls on this list, so stay tuned for this one. This one's very unique. We have a couple normals going in off the rip. We have the Attention Star, Strong Sharp Ball. We have the Black Widow Ghost. That is a little bit earlier than the Attention Star, in my opinion. Nothing crazy, though. Next up, GB5. That fits as a versatile benchmark in the medium smooth slot. The Origin, I think, is going to be earlier than both the Star and the Black Widow Ghost. It is a very early hooking bowling ball. We have a Pink Widow Urethane. That's going to go squarely in the urethane slot. Next up is a Venom Shock, the Motive Goat. That fits well below the GB5. I think those pair really nicely together, but there is a big gap between those two. And we have about 20-ish bowling balls to go through, so bear with us on some of these. So we might hopefully be able to fill that gap, but we'll see. Next up, Attention Star S2. I see the S2 as hooking later than the OG Black Widow Ghost. The Black Widow Ghost hooked a little bit early. Well, man, I disagree with myself there. No, I don't think so. I think the Attention Star does hook earlier and goes a lot more forward off the end of the pattern. The Ghost and the Attention Star are very close together. Next is a Summit. Ooh. I'm going to put the Summit in front of the GB5. Not by much. I think these two are fairly close. The Summit will be a little more angular down lane, but I think they're going to be close. Next up is a Reality Check. This was a hybrid Reality. That's going to go after the Origin, but before the S2. This thing hooked very early for being a hybrid. It wasn't really well liked, unfortunately. I thought it was really good. Other people didn't think that much of it, unfortunately. Scorpion Low Flare. Ooh, that is a fun question. Venom Shock versus Scorpion Low Flare. I see the Scorpion Low Flare as earlier than my Venom Shock. I actually have both of these and have tested them against each other. They are very close, though. But I do see the Low Flare, with how dull it comes and with how strong the cover is, to be a little bit before the Venom. Next is a Deviate Captivate. This was a very gross bowling ball. I'm sorry. The colorway is just terrible on it. I am not a fan of that green and yellow. It was a weak and sharp HK22 cover stock. This was the weak ball for Deviate for a while before they got into the Chill series. So that one fits squarely into the weak and sharp slot. Next up is a Tour Dynamics. I'm putting the Tour Dynamics on... Ooh, this is going to be a question. It is a very weak bowling ball for being an ASIM. It was weird. It was a very odd ball. I'm actually going to put it in front of the Scorpion Low Flare, below the GB5. It is going to be pretty close to a Low Flare, just asymmetrical, but very smooth and slow. It's great for short patterns, not good for longer patterns. Next up is an Absolute Power. I'm going to put that on the strong smooth end, but it's going to be very weak. Probably the weakest strong and smooth ball because the cover stock is so weak. Emerge Hybrid is coming up next. Wow, that's going to be in... We have a lot of hybrids in this strong and sharp category. This is going to be our fourth one so far. I would see the Emerge hybrid fitting after the Attention Star S2, but before the Black Widow Ghost. It's gonna be a weird spot in between there. The Emerge hybrid acted just like the Emerge Pearl, basically. Very, very close balls together. Next is a Piranha Power Core. I see the Piranha before the Tour Dynamics, but after the GB5. The Piranha was very much middle of the road, solid, symmetrical bowling ball. Next is a Hustle M&M. M&M is going to fit below the weak and sharp below the Captivate in the weak and sharp category because the core is just so weak. Max Bias is going to be the strongest and earliest ball on the list without question. That is the strongest core on the market today for a bowling ball. And the Zen Gold label, we have a medium and sharp ball. Awesome, awesome. We have, again, the Pearl Collision. A lot of people bought this Pearl Collision. I can't remember if it's the Wicked or... Let's just look it up. DVA Wicked Collision. Nope, that didn't work. Wicked Collision. It is not the Wicked. It is the Violent. This is the Violent Collision. So the Violent is going to fit... Man, this thing was early, too. This thing hooked really early. I'll put it... Man, this one's tough. I'm going to put it after the Origin and before the Reality Check. I think it hooked very, very early. I think it hooked a little earlier than the Check. Not by much, though. Those were balls from different eras, really. Next up is our first overseas bowling ball. So the thing Gustavo has is a couple of overseas pieces. The first one is an all black, ultra black Idol. This is the OG Idol, but with an all black cover stock. Same everything else. Literally identical in every other category. We're going to put it after the GB5, though, and before the Piranha. I actually bowled against somebody with this thing. It looked awesome. But I have it after the GB5 and before the Piranha. Next up is a Blue Coral Venom. The Blue Coral Venom, I think, fits below or above the Dynamics, below the Piranha. After the Dynamics, it hooks a little bit later. But before the Low Flare and before the original Venom Shock. I think that they are all very close together. These last like 5 are very close together. Next up is the Overseas Envy Pearl. This one was on sale during Black Friday of 2024 because I have one. And I have it actually above the Black Widow Ghost for sure and above the Attention Star. I think it's going to go after the Emerge. It has a weaker cover on it. Super strong core, but weaker cover. So I have it after the Emerge hybrid, but before the Black Widow Ghost. Next up is the OG Hammer Envy. The Hammer Envy was very, very early and strong, but not as strong as a Max Bias. Next is the Insight X. So this is another overseas ball. The Storm Insight came out a couple of years ago, was overall just not well liked, didn't sell very well. I don't remember why it was. It had good ball reaction, just didn't do that great. The colors weren't awesome, which might have hurt it. But then overseas, there was an Insight X, and this was a shiny hybrid version of the Insight. And the Insight didn't have the strongest core and cover in the world. So I'm going to put it actually in front of the Attention Star S2 because that had NRG on it, and the Attention Star S2's cover stock is actually E-Trax, which is weaker in general. So that's where I see the Insight X fitting. It's going to be very close to that Reality Check, though. They're going to be nearly identical bowling balls. And next up is the IQ Galaxy. This is another overseas ball. It has the IQ core, but a really strong hybrid cover stock. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fit that on the bottom end of medium sharp. So like I mentioned, insanely, insanely strong cover stock, but with a really weak core. So it's going to fit in the medium and sharp category. Next, it was another overseas ball. These last couple are overseas pieces. It was a Cherry Vibe, but it was overseas, I guess. I'm putting it above the M&M, but after the Captivate. Next up is the Sunstorm. This was arguably one of the worst reacting bowling ball Storm has made in many years. It had the IQ cover or core in it, similar IQ core in it, but then it had a super, super strong cover stock. So I'm actually going to put that probably right alongside between the Low Flare and the, let's put it right after the Tour Dynamics. It was super early cover stock, but then the core just never hooked. It was a very weird ball. It was more of like a collector's piece. It was limited edition. So it looked cool in that regard, but didn't roll the best. I think I've maybe seen 2 people that I know have one, and it was and actually drill it, and neither liked it at all. Next is a Hammer Ultima. This is a very middle of the road solid bowling ball, so fits in the medium and smooth category. I see it as close to that Piranha. It was another overseas ball, so it's a little bit more of a guess. All of my overseas options that I'm have out here and all the limited ones, I haven't seen go down the lane that much. I'm mainly using the numbers, the RG, the core, the covers, things like that to be able to pick where it goes. But I see the Ultima. It's going to be later than an Idol, but I think it might be earlier than a Piranha. Jumping over, we have the Hyped Pearl. The Hyped Pearl definitely fits below a Captivate. Very weak cover core combo. However, not as weak as a Vibe or a Hustle. Then we have the Rubicon UC2. This was a Pearl Rubicon. This thing was really well liked among a lot of people. It was, though, a medium and sharp bowling ball, and I see it to fit before the Zen Gold label. It was asymmetrical, but very, very mild. It also had a really weak cover on it, so it's going to be a medium sharp ball. Next up is the original EJ VIP. I'm going to put this in front of the IQ Galaxy, but below the Zen Gold label. I believe that was the what core was that? Was that the Forza core, I believe? I don't remember the specific name of it, but then it had a weaker Pearl cover stock on it. So it's going to go after the gold label before the Galaxy. And last but not least, we have a ball that hooks earlier than almost any other ball on the market at the time, and that was the Brutal Collision from Deviate. This bright green and blue and orange ball hooked super, super early, was super slow down lane, but I don't think it's as early as the max bias yet. That max bias still reigns supreme. So here is everything we have for you, Gustavo. You are a two-handed righty league bowler. And as we can see, there's one category that you don't have anything for, and that is a weak and smooth category. So IQ Tours, Arctic Vibes, Max Thrill Solids fit really well right here. You also have a ton of strong and sharp balls that are very close together, and a lot of medium smooth balls that are close together. So you probably could get rid of a couple balls in each of those categories. In my opinion, if I had to pick some, I think the Reality Check is a little too close to the Insight X, which is a little too close to the Attention Star, which is a little too close to the Emerge. So I think out of these four, you probably only need one or two. I think keep the Origin. I don't know about the Violent Collision. I think that's a little too close also in all of these. If I had to pick four, I would go Origin, Insight X, Attention Star, and probably a Black Widow Ghost. And then for the medium and smooth category, you have a lot of really good ones, but a lot of them are close together again. So like I said, Blue Coral, Scorpion, Venom. Venom and Scorpion are very close together. The Tour Dynamics and the Piranha are close. The Ultima is kind of in a weird spot. The Idol and GB5 could be kind of close. So there's a lot of trimming you could do with this arsenal to be able to make room for a weak and smooth ball. Overall, though, very good arsenal, especially for a league bowler. You don't need urethane. That's A-okay. But overall, really well done. I really like it. All right, we are moving on to Keith. Keith is a two-handed righty who bowls on wood. Now, I am going to give a little bit of a preface. There's a lot of bowling balls on this list that are bonkers old. Some of them are older than me. So any bowling balls that are too old, I am putting in the weak and smooth category because that's where they're going to fit. The game has evolved so much that they just aren't going to flare. They just aren't going to hook much in general. So any of those balls are really just going to fit in the weak and smooth spot, and then you can really adjust them based on surface, but they're not going to hook as much as ones from today's game. But I will show you guys in just a second what I mean by that. Starting off strong with the Arctic Vibe, that's going to go in the weak and smooth category. And this is what I mean. We have an old Ebonite big one. This was a very, very early on asymmetrical ball. I believe it was part of, we now have like the one reverb, the one remix. Those are remakes off of this guy, which is bonkers old. So we are just putting that in the weak and smooth category. It's been out for 20 plus years. It shouldn't hook that much anymore. On wood lanes, it's a little different story, especially for a two-handed righty. You can make a lot of stuff hook, but it's going to act just like a weak and smooth ball. Next up, we have the Columbia 300 Chaos. This thing came out in 2017. It was a middle of the road, just medium solid bowling ball. A couple of the PBA pros liked it back at the time. I specifically remember a Brad and Kyle video where when Kyle was on Columbia staff, he had a Chaos and really liked it. I don't know why that sticks out in my memory. That one was pretty good though. Next up is a Radioactive Vibe. That's going to fit after the Arctic Vibe, which is odd because the Arctic is the hybrid version, but it just hooks eons more and earlier. Next up, I believe this was the problem is I couldn't even find pictures for some of these old bowling balls because they are that old. Was this the Mass Chaos? No, this was the Command Zone, the Brunswick Command Zone. That one's insanely old. For anyone who wants to know, Brunswick Command Zone. It was, yeah, it doesn't even have pictures. It was a 260 RG and an '05 differential. Oh my god. Doesn't have anything. Introducing the command. Yeah, no. That one's gonna go in the weak and smooth category. Next up is a Midnight Vibe. This was a very, very old vibe ball. It definitely hooks way later than the other vibe balls that we have. This one is eons old. Next is a Messenger, but it's an old one. I'm going to put that just in the list of really old bowling balls. Super weak ball. The Messenger series was awesome back in the day. This was, I believe, the original or one of the originals. Someone who knows bowling ball history before 2010 can really help me out on that. But all four of these balls are at least 15 years old, potentially more. Next up is the Mass Chaos. That's also just going to go on the end. Insanely old bowling ball. All right, we're back to newer ones. We have the Rattler Big Bite. The Rattler Big Bite was a medium and smooth ball. It is a hybrid, though. I'm going to put it, I'm actually going to put it in front of the Chaos. The Radical balls hook a little bit earlier, especially from compared to older Columbia balls not back in the day, but before the Brunswick merger. So that's going to fit before the Chaos. Next, we have a Raw Hammer Pearl. I'm going to put that after the Radioactive Vibe, but before all the balls that came out before I could even speak words. We have a Rhino Urethane. That's just going to go at the end of our list again. Super old Rhino ball. And then we have who I have to look up what this one is. Is this one no, this isn't the Mass Chaos. This might be the Scout. That one might be the Scout. There was a Scout on here. That's just going to go on the end. Rotogrip Show Off. This one was a super weak medium and smooth bowling ball. 253 RG, I believe an 045 differential is what I saw before this. Another older Rotogrip ball. So far on this list, minus the vibes, the two vibes and the raw, all of these, and the Rattler, I guess, all of these bowling balls are at least 6 years old and potentially more for a lot of them. But then we have a Storm Level. The Storm Level is going to be a weak and smooth ball. That's going to be the earliest one on the list. That is a brand new ball. Awesome. We have the Red Pearl Urethane. This one was an asymmetrical urethane bowling ball from Hammer. Overseas ball only. It was a little bit cheaper. I think you can still buy it for pretty cheap. It's earlier than a Purple Hammer and a little bit smoother. Black Widow Mania. That's a new one. We're going to put that in the strong and sharp category. Next is a Deviate Turmoil 2. Now, I have the solid one here. Keith doesn't say if he has the solid or the pearl version. There were two versions. We're going to talk about the solid one. This one was stronger than the Show Off, but weaker than everything else. This one didn't really get much traction. Usually, if you put a number in a bowling ball name, it doesn't do the greatest. Shout out RSTX 1, 2, and 3. That is really where the Turmoil 2 fits. If it's the pearl version, it's just going to fall in the medium and sharp category. And then we have another Violent Collision. Everybody has that Violent Collision lately on these Arsenal guides. But that is going to be a strong and sharp ball in front of the Black Widow Mania. So now that we have all of these bowling balls, let's look at what we could do to spice up the arsenal a little bit. So as I mentioned, all of these bowling balls, 7 of these bowling balls are very, very, very old. They will look good on wood. So most bowling balls will look okay on wood and they will still hook. However, if you got put on a 28 mil house shot in a normal center, I don't think a lot of those will look very good. You're going to leave a lot of corner pins. You're going to leave a lot of 710s, a lot of lilies, things like that. Older bowling balls don't hit like today's bowling balls do because of just technology. So that's like going to a golf course and using wooden clubs or something like that. So these we're just going to ignore. We're going to ignore all the old balls. Out of everything else, though, a couple weak and sharp balls would be really good here. So Hustle M&Ms, things like even the Ocean Vibe, Max Thrill Pearl, those all look really good on wood lanes, especially older wooden lanes. Those could be fantastic on this arsenal. Otherwise, a couple medium and sharp balls would be good too, like a Road Warrior or a Primal Rage Evolution, or even a Scorpion Strike, because pearl bowling balls generally do a little bit better on wood, especially after game 1. Otherwise, weak and smooth balls. I bet this Arctic Vibe's pretty good. I bet this Level can be really good. And then if you need it to be better, you can polish it. That looks really good. I don't know how much the Black Widow Mania and the Collision actually are used. Depends how old the wood lanes are, but great options there. Medium Smooth looks really, really good. Now, these last three are pretty old, but that Rattler Big Bite is pretty okay for what it is. The Rattler series is overall pretty good, pretty smooth. So that might end up just needing too much angle too early in the day. Then you'd have to go to your weaker bowling balls. But what I'd recommend, a couple weak and sharp balls, a couple medium sharp balls, and then you're good to go. Thank you, Keith, for sending in your arsenal. Hope you guys enjoyed this Arsenal guide. Quick reminder to like and subscribe if you haven't. Helps me out a ton. You'll get notified next time a video goes live. Otherwise, make sure to go check out DH Lab 3D to get yourself a ZVL bowling chamois. We have about 25 left right now, so make sure to go grab them before they're gone for good. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.